beautiful people, welcome to my channel. So we are discussing the Real Housewives of Salt Lake City, the reunion part 2. I don't have much notes, I didn't jot much down, so this recap and review might be a little bit all over the place, but I'm going to try to cover all bases as we go through. So we start off the episode with Andy addressing, it seemed like this episode was all about Mary. So Andy addresses some questions that viewers have written in and wanted to know more about Mary and her marriage. And so one of the questions that Andy asked was, did your grandmother really leave a will for you to marry her husband? And Mary says no. So of course everybody's shocked, because remember, this is what the whole hype was with when before the episode started. They talked about it in the first few episodes and stuff like that. So to come to find out, there was nothing really written in the will to say that, hey, you must marry my granddaughter. So Andy goes, he furthers the question. He's like, so how did it come about that you married your grandmother's husband? And she said that she spoke to her grandmother before she died. And then 2 years after her grandmother died, her and her husband spoke about it, prayed about it, and it just happened. So Andy was like, well, if your grandmother had wanted one of her children to marry, or someone one of her girls, as she say, to marry him, wouldn't your mother had been a better choice? Wouldn't Mary's mother be a better choice? And Mary was like, well, it didn't happen like that. It just so happened that he and I are the ones who got married. So if you watched, I'm just as confused as you, because it seemed like this whole season we've been thinking that, hey, it was in the will to marry as her grandmother, which come to find out in the reunion, that's not the way it goes. Now, further on down in the episode, he also asked, it's been brought to our attention that you were married before, so did you divorce your husband at the time in order to marry Robert? Well, we already know his name is Robert. So she was like, no, my husband and I got divorced for irreconcilable differences way before Robert and I got together, so it had nothing to do with it. But from the gist of the conversation that Mary was having, and she got pretty upset, and I could understand why, because she said she's been married 22 years. Marriages are hard. She's trying to do her best with her marriage, and they're in a good space. So for all of the comments to be coming at her now, that is very upsetting. But Mary have to understand, she put her life out here in the limelight. We're just reacting and asking questions based on whatever is presented to us. So we've never seen anything like this. So of course we're going to ask questions. So hopefully she'll be able to get more comfortable with it and we can move forward. All right. So then again, we went back to Lisa and Lisa and Heather. I don't know. I love Heather. So Lisa gives Heather and Whitney a nickname. They call it a couple's name. She calls them weather, bad weather. Whitney and Heather takes stories, spin it, becomes a tornado. So therefore they're considered bad weather. And then Heather goes, well, I hope this one sticks, because Janisa did not stick. I guess it was Jen and Lisa who's supposed to be BFFs. She gave them a nickname and she was like, Janisa fell flat. So hopefully this name sticks. So that everybody thought that was funny. Everybody was laughing at that one. Mary, well, like I said, I'll be all over the place. So I didn't know that Mary had her sweat glands removed, and she said it's because there is a family. It is an illness within the family. It's hereditary, where her glands get as big as eggs, and they cause her a lot of pain, so therefore she had to get them removed. So everyone is thinking that when you get your sweat glands removed, you don't sweat anymore. So Heather was like, because Andy asked Heather, he's like, have you ever heard of anything like this before? And she was like, no, but I want to market it if it's something marketable. She's like, can you not sweat after you get your sweat glands removed? And she was like, no, that's not how it works. So that was an interesting conversation right there. Come to find out that first episode when Mary told Jen she smelled like hospital, Jen is letting us know now that she didn't even go to the hospital. So Andy's like, so well, that was the headline right there. How you gonna tell her she smelled like hospital? Wasn't she when she wasn't even at the hospital? So exactly what did she smell like? And does getting your sweat glands removed cause you to be more sensitive, your nose to be more sensitive to, or your sense of smell, I should say, be more sensitive to odors? And she was like, well, I don't know, but I'm telling you, it smelled like hospital. Oh my gosh. Then we also touched on it. Like I said, this episode was basically about Mary. We also touched on the fact that a question was asked, and it was offensive when, it came up in the episode where Mary said she went to a convenience store, and because there were people outside that she did not go into the convenience store. And it was told to us that, it was black guys outside. And Jen did tell her in the episode, how are you going to be afraid of your own people? Remember, you're black, just a reminder. So in this reunion, Andy brought it up again. He's like, what was that about? Are you really afraid of black girls? And she was like, after she went around and about and around and about, that was an uncomfortable one to watch. She said, I'm not, it came to the point where she told us that she's not attracted to black men. And everybody was like, what? But you're married to a black man. And then Lisa, trying to help her, goes, oh, but he's light-skinned. So what? He's still a black man. So, Andy asked the question again. Are you not attracted to black men? And she was like, no, not really. So he's like, are you attracted to white men? And she was like, she didn't really want to answer it. She was just shaking her head side to side. And then eventually she said, yes, that's what I'm attracted to. So I'm guessing after this reunion airs and her husband sees what she said, there's going to be some conversation in the household. Mary, get ready for it. There is going to be some conversations being had in that household. You married a whole 22 years to a black man, come to find out that you don't like your husband. And then, like she pointed out, again, Andy went a little bit deep. Like, really? He went in. He asked her if they were sexually active. And she took a while to answer it. And she was like, not for a few years. Because, again, like she pointed out, marriage is hard. They've been married 22 years. It's not all been a bed of roses. Even in dating relationships, when you're with somebody, you have the hard time where, you're not always jumping each other's bones, I would say, for lack of better words. So it's something that they're working through and that everybody goes through. And even when he did mention that, or she said what she said, the camera went on to Meredith, who shook her head, yep. He also went on to Lisa, who shook her head, yep. And he went on to Jen, who shook her head. So everybody is agreeing with her as far as marriage is hard. It's not always a bed of roses and everybody's going to be good all the time. So it's something to, it was just something to think about, as Mary said. And like I said, it's around that time where she broke down in tears and cried. Jen apologized to, after it was brought up, Jen finally apologized to Mary about making the comment when they went to the Roaring 20s party about being a grandfather MFer. And, they talked about it, and then Mary was like, she still has not apologized. And Jen was like, seriously, honestly, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have said that. But then they doubled down on Jen again, because throughout the airing of the show and leading up to us, being in season 1, Jen was attacking Mary on Twitter. Didn't know this because I didn't follow these ladies on Twitter. Didn't know that. She said the dress that Jen wore in the first the dress that Mary wore in the first episode to Meredith's party was it looked like a Christmas tree. She said some other things about Mary, and it just really wasn't nice. And come to find out that Mary did not like those comments, and she made it known to Jen that it really wasn't nice what was said. Another thing I want to touch on is the fact that, again, with Mary, look like this whole episode was about Mary, like I said. Andy was talking to Mary about, you know, the family dynamics and the fact that her second cousin, Shalinda, I believe her name, was working in her home. And then Mary goes to tell us also that her grand aunt is working in her house. Her grandmother's sister is also working there. And she's like, you know, I guess it was hard for them to understand because she's like, they work for me and I pay their rent and I have a big house and I would rather have family help me out than strangers coming into my house. So I guess if that works for them, that's fine, but it's just a little bit, you know, weird to me, and I'm guessing to the rest of the panel, because everybody had a look on their face like, all right, let me mind my business. Maybe this is something that they do. I'm not going to say anything. And then they moved on to the next subject. All right. And let me see what else was touched on. Oh, it got to the point where everybody is deciding to take a break now. Now we're getting to the end of it. They decide to take a break and the cameras are still rolling. And for 6 minutes after they finished and said, okay, let's take a break, we had Lisa and Heather going at each other. They try to pull in Lisa tried to pull in Meredith, but Meredith was like not really into it. At one point she and Whitney left to go get Advil, and Heather and Lisa kept going at it. And the gist of it is, in Heather's opinion, in Lisa's opinion, and the gist of it is, in Lisa's opinion, Heather doesn't want Lisa to be friends with anybody on the panel. She don't want her to be friends with Jen, and she feels that if she tries to be friends with Whitney, that Heather will step in. And she went at her because, according to her, Heather went on the blogs and spoke bad about Meredith's marriage, and that's her friend, and you don't talk bad about my friend's marriage, and so on and so forth. So her and Heather were going into it, and even though Lisa kept escalating to a point, Heather was just cool and collected, and she is just answering her, just saying what was on her mind, and she didn't care. She was like, you are mean, and yes, it is known, and everybody's going to know it tonight. And Lisa was just going on and on and on. But like I said, I am all over the place with this. It was kind of a heated, discussion this time, but more on the funny side, because Heather kept making sure that she gave those jabs in there. And Mary's expression throughout the whole thing when they were going at it, either her eyes were open wide or her mouth dropped open for the things that they said. Or one of the things that was mentioned is, it was asked to Heather by Andy, how does it make you feel seeing yourself on camera and the things that you went through for the season? And she was like, it was kind of therapeutic for me to see all this, and it made me be more open with my daughters. And she's like, because of the way that we are treated in the Mormon church if we are divorced or whatever, I want my daughters to be a little bit more open. I want them to experience everything. I want them to have multiple partners. I want them to go out and party. I want them to drink. I want them, she didn't say anything about drugs. No drugs. She's like, I want them to go out and party, and I just want them to live. Which is only what you would want for your children, to give them different choices in life. You know, how you're going to have one path and this is the path that is known. Why aren't we exposed to more in order to make choices for ourselves in the future? Because look at where she is now. She went and she did the missionary work, like she said. She came home at 23, still a virgin, got married, had these girls, and then her marriage fell apart. No, what is she supposed to do? So it was a pretty interesting episode to watch. We have one more to go, and in part 3, I should say, in part 3 we're gonna get a little bit more into it. The husbands are gonna come on, and either virtually or actually on stage with them, and we're gonna get to know a little bit more about them. So that is my recap and review of the Real Housewives of Salt Lake City, the reunion part 2. If you like this review, please give it a thumbs up. Make sure that you subscribe to the channel, comment if you wish, and I will see you on the next video. Until then, take care of yourselves and your family. Take care. Bye-bye.